If you are watching this video, congratulations, you are almost done with GES 101. I just wanted to quickly go over some of the final assignments to clarify anything that you might have questions on. So there's two final assignments. There is the final PowerPoint and there is the final proposal that you'll have to submit that documents what it is that you are planning on doing. Now, before you get too far into this, I think it's really important to understand before you do a cultural interaction like this, it really pays to do your homework. Because if you don't know what you're looking for and you just kind of go into it, you're just not going to get as much out of it. So how do you do your homework? There's a lot of ways. For instance, before I go into a new country, one of the things I love to do is watch movies, especially old movies, black and white movies. Clearly, they're not going to give you the exact sort of like understanding of what's going on, but I think they're kind of fun. The other thing that I usually do is I try and find a good historical fiction book for that particular place, especially if I'm traveling to a new place. Maybe read some blogs or some good travel writing books. Those kinds of things kind of let you know what it is that that you can be looking for that you might miss otherwise. Now, especially if you're going to be working with people like downtown, inner city, some of the volunteer experiences, you're going to want to make sure that you talk to someone before you get into this. So talk to someone who's already done it. Talk to someone who has experience in this culture. Find out the kinds of things that you need to know before you begin working with people from this culture. And finally, take some time to read some newspapers, magazines. You can go online. For instance, one of the things I started doing, we spend time on our study abroad group in Vienna. And so before I get there, I always go online. There's a English newspaper that I read, and I find out what some of the current events are, some of the things that are happening in the city. And it always gives me really good insight into some opportunities that I would never know about if I hadn't read through some of the things. So, first thing, do your homework. All right, now let's talk about the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint is going to help you do some of these things. And the PowerPoint is going to take a little bit of time. So let's go over quickly what some of the things are that you'll need to do for this PowerPoint. Now, you have one of two options. Option A is if you are going to be traveling someplace, you are going to immerse yourself into a different culture, and that's where you're going to be meeting strangers. Culture B, or option B, is if you're going to be staying in this culture and working with people that are coming into this culture who have a different cultural background. As you can kind of see, they're very different kinds of experiences, so I think the way that you prepare for them needs to be a little bit different. All right, so the first slide, now each of these slides, it'll be about between, I'd say 10 and 12 slides. You can use bullet points, you can use pictures, whatever it is that you want to get through this. It doesn't have to be long paragraphs. So the first thing is just a real brief description of where you're going, and this is true for both of these. What your experience is going to be like, how you're going to get the 25 hours. The specifics, more detailed proposal will come in the final form that you're going to be filling out. All right, then I want you to do a brief background of the country that you will be traveling to. Some key dates in history. Now, okay, I get this. Like if you're going to go to Rome, key dates in Roman history, that's how can you put Roman history into like 10 bullet points? I mean, I get that. That's hard. So you have to be a little bit picky and choosy. You have to pick and choose pretty well. Make sure that you do spend time on the 20th century sorts of things as well, because clearly those are going to be the things that have impacted the people in this country. The next thing has to do with major religious or spiritual beliefs of the country, and maybe talk about why that is and how that impacts people. It's just good to know. So, for instance, you go to Czech Republic, and people there are just not interested in the church at all. They're interested in spiritual things, but not in the church. You go like 20 miles over to Poland, and to be Polish is to be Catholic. That is the major religion. Everybody understands the Catholic Church. They might not go there, but Polish and Catholic pretty much go together. So it's important to know those kinds of distinctions. So the religious and spiritual beliefs of the major beliefs of the country and how that impacts people. Hot topics of the day. It might be things happening while you're there. It might be political topics, current event sorts of things. So there might be an overlap between hot topics and recent conflicts. Clearly, if you're going anywhere in Europe, issues such as immigration, economic issues, those kinds of things are going to come up. So take a little bit of time to do a little bit of background work as to what's happening in your specific country, because each country is very different in how they deal with some of these global issues. It would also be good to do a little bit of look at the U.S. role in some of these conflicts, and maybe some of the attitudes that this country has towards the United States. It's kind of nice to know how people are going to be receiving you when you come into the country. Countries can be very, very different in how they see Americans and how frustrated they are with Americans. The economic background, I think this is really important because the economics just impact life all over the place in these countries. So having just a little bit of understanding of where the economy is, what makes up the largest proportion of the economy, some of those kinds of things. And then one final slide on etiquette, on things to keep in mind when you travel to, whatever. And it might be kind of nonverbal things to keep in mind, like don't look people in the eye, or don't drink the water, or when you greet someone, you kiss them on each cheek, or, those kinds of things. Maybe phrases that you can use to say hello, goodbye, thank you, those kinds of things. If you're going to London, you probably don't need to know any phrases. All right, now the next set of slides has to do with planning how you're going to approach this whole thing, right? How you are going to get 25 hours of interaction with people that you don't know. Now, for someone like me, I tend to be a little bit introverted, and it's hard for me to go up to a complete stranger and say, "Hi, how is your culture? Tell me about your culture." I mean, it's stupid. It's not going to work, right? And especially, I think sometimes people think, I'll just sit in a cafe and talk to people. Okay, people don't talk to you in cafes. They keep to themselves, all right? And they probably wouldn't appreciate it if you talked to them in a cafe anyway. And if you're trying get to know the waiter, yeah. The waiters are so busy, especially in places like Europe, that for them to chit-chat with you is like a huge sacrifice on their part. So, first of all, you're going to have to figure out who can you talk to. So I want you to figure out at least 2 scripts that you could use, okay? So one might be talking to people on a train, because when people are on a train, they're trapped. And sometimes I've had the most awesome conversations with other travelers. Now, these people don't have to be from the culture that you are that you've done background on and things like that. Talk to anybody that's from a culture that's not like Minnesota or, even from the US. You will meet some of the most interesting people. So maybe it's on a train. If you are going to a hostel, people in hostel love to just sit around in the evening and talk to new people. That's usually, these are travelers that are traveling for the experience of it. Maybe it's talking to someone, sharing a table at the breakfast buffet or something like that. So pick 2 groups. And then what I want you to do is come up with kind of a script, some possible questions you could ask instead of "Hi, tell me about your culture. Come up with better questions, right? What are questions that you can approach strangers with? Okay. A couple of like opening questions, and then a couple of things that you could talk about as you get to know each other a little bit better. So 2 sets of questions, all right? Interaction strategies. And then the next part is the authentic culture seeking strategies. Now, I'll be honest, especially if you're going with a Bethel interim trip does not have a Z tag, it's hard to find 25 hours that you can spend with strangers because most of these places you're only in for a couple of days. So you have to really go out of your way to do some observation, because I think there really is some value in being immersed in a culture that's different from your own. So if you can't quite get 25 hours, at least you can spend some time better understanding this culture that you have immersed yourself in, right? So to do that, you have to figure out where that culture is and what you can look for. So authentic culture seeking strategies. How do you get away from the tourist centers? Because the tourist centers are not authentic culture. Okay. As much as you'd like to think that the Hard Rock Cafe is like all about that culture, it's not. That's the US culture. That's tourist culture. So figure out where locals eat. Figure out where they hang out. Figure out where just normal people who live in this city, the kinds of things that they do. And it might mean that you have to kind of separate yourself from the group every now and then. It might mean that you ask shopkeepers, where do you think the best place to eat is? Or where's the best place to get gelato? Some of those kinds of things. So what kinds of culture seeking strategies are you going to have? And then the next one, what are some observation strategies? What are you going to look for? So just because you find like an authentic Italian restaurant in Rome, well, what are you going to do, right? You have to figure out what you're going to look for. Otherwise, you're going to miss a ton of this stuff. So maybe your focus is going to be families, right? Like how mothers treat their children, how children react, what kind of discipline families seem to have, different family norms that you notice, maybe how women are treated differently, or the different roles that women have. There's a lot of different kinds of things that you can look for. And especially if you're traveling to a number of different cultures, you can use the same strategies, look for the same things in the different cultures. And if you are on a travel trip, especially a Bethel travel trip, you probably are not going to really get a ton of information about any one culture. So what I would challenge you to do is do some comparing and contrasting. So try and meet strangers maybe in Rome and in London at the beginning, the middle, and the end. Do some observational exercises where you look for the specific things in each of those places and make notes in your journal about the kinds of things that you see. All right, so that's option A. When you're traveling someplace and you're becoming immersed in another culture, and especially if you're going to have trouble getting in 25 hours of conversations with strangers, I do think that there's some other valuable things that you can do. Now, let's say you are not going to travel. You are staying here and you are still part of the majority culture, and there's people from other cultural backgrounds that are coming to you. That's a very different kind of situation. So this PowerPoint will have a few different kinds of slides. First of all, once again, you start with a very brief description of your planned experience, right? And then you're going to have to figure out what is the primary culture of the people that you will be working with. Now, this might be really easy. Maybe you're going to be working with Somali refugees, right? But maybe you're going to be working at a homeless shelter. Well, okay, who are the people that are going to be there? What kind of cultures do they come from? The only way for you to figure that out is to talk to someone who's been there, to get a better flavor for kind of who's there and what's going on. So somehow figure out what the primary culture is, or choose a culture that you at least have some sort of indication that you'll probably meet some people from this background. And then that'll be, that's what I want you to do some background information on. So brief history of the country, some of the major religious or spiritual beliefs, recent conflicts that have happened in that country and the role of the U.S. And then I think it would be really helpful to understand differences in etiquette, because although the people that you'll probably be interacting with are trying to fit into the U.S. culture, for you to display an understanding of things that are important to them in their culture, maybe even different phrases in their language, those kinds of things can be really meaningful and really helpful. So a little bit of cultural background. Now, the other thing I want you to do is to figure out, have a little bit better background of what you're walking into and how these people are dealing with bringing their culture into the Twin Cities. Usually these people are part of a community where there's other people from similar cultural backgrounds. So do one slide that looks at economic and demographic background, right? Especially with this culture group in the Twin Cities. What are some current events? What are some happening things? What are some challenges? Once again, there might be some overlap between B and C. What are some of the current challenges that people from this cultural background, from this community, are experiencing right now? Things that you should probably be aware of. And also, what are some of the challenges that someone coming from a different background, what are some of the challenges that they're having in the majority culture that is not their own, right? So if they're recent immigrants, there's very specific kinds of challenges that recent immigrants have. Maybe it's language challenges or getting a job or whatever. And you might even want to talk about some of the solutions, some of the programs. Maybe you run into your research, you run into some really cool programs that are helping people walk through some of these issues. That's what I would like to get on this slide. And then finally, one slide that just does a real brief background on the agency or the church that you're going to be working with or going to, and maybe what their mission is, who they are, how long they've been in business. I mean, those kinds of things. And then once again, I think it's important to have sort of a strategy. So for instance, if let's say you're going to be working with after school program and tutoring some kids. Well, so how do you go from like, this is how you do an algebraic formula to tell me about your culture, right? You have to have some idea of what your strategies are going to be like. You know, you have to have an idea of how to start a conversation about culture because you really want to be the learner here. And if you're not prepared to do that, I think it's really easy to fall back into you are the majority culture and they just kind of try and fit in, and it's just not as meaningful unless you plan ahead of time what your interaction strategies are going to be. All right, so that's the final PowerPoint. What I'd like you to do is to pick one of those. Now this is going to take a little more time than some of the other assignments that you've done so far in this class. Now, when you begin your experience, you are going to want to keep a journal. And you're not going to turn this journal in. This is totally up for you, but you're going to want to have information in this journal that'll help you complete GES 102Z. Now, different ways to do a journal. You can do it the old-fashioned way. Today we saw the Eiffel Tower, you know, and that's fine. That kind of helps you remember some of the things that you did. It helps you document your 25 hours or, you know, the observations that you had, those kinds of things. But I think keeping a journal of impressions, of stories, of rich descriptions, those are so fun to go back and look at. So for instance, if you visit a place that's gorgeous, sit and just do some creative writing. Like right now, it's like I talk about the smells and the warm breeze and the beautiful things that you see, or the weird people, you know, what are they doing, or some of the first impressions, like why are these people like acting like this, and it's just so weird that they're doing this sort of thing. That's the kind of thing that's going to help you do a better job with GES 102Z. So let's just talk about what that final course is going to look like. Basically, once again, these are the ZTAG outcomes. You're going to have to document that you've actually done these things. So in different ways, you're going to have to show that you understand kind of your own values and beliefs, the values and beliefs of the people that you talked with or the countries that you visited, an understanding of subgroups, all of those kinds of things. Now, you are going to have to fill out a final form before you're done with this class. And this final form, this is what it looks like. And basically you have your information and kind of some brief information about the interaction that you're planning, the experience that you're planning. And then you have to go into much greater detail into how you are going to get the 25 hours, the kinds of things that you're going to look for, things like that. It also has a reminder of some of the ZTAG outcomes so that you are basically, when you sign this or however it is that you're going to turn this in, you're saying that you understand that, yes, through this experience, I know that I'm going to have to document that I have achieved these outcomes. Right? So this is something that you're going to fill out. You can either fill it out by hand, take a picture of it and upload that, or it's a Word document, so you can just put your answers in there and upload it. You can do that however it is that you'd like to do that. Right? Now, a couple of things that you will need for the next course. You will be asked to do a DIE analysis and a cultural learning model analysis. So if you do those ahead of time, if you do those when you're in country or right after you get back from doing some of the volunteer work, you'll have it right there. You can just, it'll be easy peasy when you get to 102Z. I would also challenge you to be writing down stories, because you're going to have to share stories about examples of different values and beliefs that come up. And one of those stories should describe some of the observations that you made about subgroups in that culture, right? And then finally, one of the things that you are going to have to do is talk about your pre-existing stereotypes and how they're different than what you ended up with, and how those existing stereotypes kind of framed the whole experience that you had. And if you can think through that as you're experiencing it, you'll have a lot better answers and things to share in 102Z. So those are the things that you need to do. You've got a PowerPoint that is going to take you a little bit of time, a form to fill out that needs to be approved by me before you're all done, and then a journal. And these are the kinds of things that you're going to want to keep in your journal. And in addition to that, think about keeping a scrapbook with pictures. Pictures are so fun to go back and look at. They bring back so many memories, artifacts, those kinds of things. That's the kind of thing that you can share in your PowerPoint that you're going to be doing in 102Z. And I don't know whether it's an admissions ticket to Wicked, or whether it's a brochure or a thank you note that someone from the agency that you worked with gave you. Those kind of artifacts can bring back a lot of good memories. So with that, you are almost ready to engage in this intercultural interaction. I hope it's a really good experience for you. I hope you learn a ton, and I am excited to hear the kinds of things that happen